Adam, we are so fucking back, or we are actually dumping today. But what's good, bro? What's good, bro?
Our price is dumping. It's so funny. I really don't track it, but is Bitcoin down again? Is Bitcoin at 50K yet? So I can buy more?
All I know is that you've been paying attention to Bell's coin, and so that's just been up only for the last few weeks.
It's been fun. Number go up technology. It's best technology. It's so funny, man. You work for literally like 10 months on something, but obviously people were attracted by what happened with the price after we came out with V3. To me, it's like price is price, doesn't really matter. It's up and down all the time, but obviously the merge mining is huge for us, and the security of the chain, now being on par with Dogecoin and Litecoin is like just still blows my mind. It was like I was on a podcast 2 days ago, and guys are like, dude, it's congratulations, man. Like, what? Nobody can do this. This is like incredible. And so that's when it kind of hit home for me, like, holy cow, man, we did something here. So it's been fun as shit, man. It's awesome.
It's just like we said last year, the rise of UTXO chains, proof of work, and its similarities and asset issuance protocols on top of it are so back.
Yep.
I'm excited to start off the week. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a few weeks now since we set it up. For those that are new to the show, we host this show as a live stream and also as a spaces. So I've pinned up to the top the spaces. Everyone here, please retweet it so that everybody else can see and hear the conversation. If you prefer the video option, you can also see that pinned up to the top, and you could come in and join the live conversation. Looks like there's over 100 people in and out of the live stream already. So good to see Pensive Shepe, who's usually on our live stream. And we're diving into another, and this one's a little bit more advanced, programmable layer on Bitcoin, diving into ZKs, which I see to be a hot topic here on Bitcoin. We have here on the stage Iago, who I believe is the founder of Sovereign, which I see on stage. And then we have Sahab. I believe did I get that right? Shahab?
Yeah, Shahab. Perfect. I'm just here to assist Iago and BitcoinOS. Pleasure to meet you guys.
Yeah, pleasure to meet you guys as well. Iago, dude, it's awesome to finally be able to chat with you. I remember trying out Sovereign many years ago, which was just last bull run, and the idea of checking out DeFi on Bitcoin. That was really one of my first introductions there outside of counterparties. So great to have you on stage, brother. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, really, really exciting. So we going to be talking to you, or is there anybody behind the BitcoinOS account that's talking as well, or are we just going back and forth here?
I think Shahab might be on the BitcoinOS account right now. I'm not sure.
Okay, no problem. Cool. Well, without further ado, so just a little bit of background. There's been a rise in over the last year or so. We saw at the first half of this year. Well, first we saw Casey come out with ordinals, and then we saw atomicals, and it was kind of sparse with all these meta protocols. And the first half of this year, we just saw this insane rise of Bitcoin L2s from all varieties, most of them being something similar to an EVM L2 on Ethereum, but they're just focused a little bit more on Bitcoin assets. We saw a handful of other meta protocols pop up. And then as of recently, Adam and I have had a few people on the show, including we've had Track and Arc Network and the OpNet team, and this growth of programmable layers. I remember, y'all guys, I saw you posting about this, I think around the Bitcoin conference time, that you'd figured out how to verify ZKs on Bitcoin in some capacity. So I'd love to get into that. But first and foremost, can you just describe to us, in your own words, what exactly is BitcoinOS and what is the objective of the project?
Sure. So I think one of the things that drives me crazy is we are now 15 years into this crypto experiment that was started with Bitcoin. And it feels to me like we're still extremely early in terms of people actually understanding what it is that we're building here, what is the value that we're actually creating. And I see a lot of discussions about why are sort of meme coins being the important meta right now, and why don't we see mass adoption, and why how do we get to the next billion users? And at the heart of all of these, I think, is just one answer, and I almost never see anyone raise it. And the one answer is that it's not about features. It's not about speed. It's not about UI. We're not building applications. That's not what crypto is for. What crypto does, the only thing really it does, but that is so important and that sets it apart from everything, every other technology that we've had before, is that it creates property rights that are digital. And when I first got excited about Bitcoin, which was a long time ago, to me, that was the exciting thing, right? That for the first time, you could own an asset that you could actually own, right? You didn't depend on anyone else for it. It wasn't held for you by a bank. It wasn't that you owned it because some piece of paper that was held in a government office somewhere said that you owned it. It was just directly controlled by you, and at the same time, it made sense for a digital world in which you could move it instantaneously anywhere in the world. You could add any software or program about how it can be used and who it can be used by. And we've built really, really exciting things utilizing this concept. We've built Bitcoin, which is this currency which is controlled by no one. It is gold that you can teleport around the world instantaneously. We've built DeFi, which are these financial tools that you can interact with. And again, you're interacting directly with all of the other people who are trading or borrowing or lending with you without middlemen, if it's done properly. And we've created NFTs, which are, unique pieces of art or unique pieces of property that you can own directly. But almost no one ever describes them in that way. And so I think we make very, very serious mistakes as an industry because we only have a vague idea of why the things that are working are actually working. So I'll give you guys a few examples, right? Or actually, I'll try and answer one of the main mysteries that I think bothers a lot of people about crypto. One of the main mysteries that seems to bother a lot of people about crypto is why so much of it is scams and Ponzi-nomics and meme coins and just, really short-term crap. And I think a big part of the reason that it is so much of it is this sort of short, slurry of short-term stuff is because as an industry, we've made a fundamental mistake. So Bitcoin came out, it created this really powerful system for permanent property rights, but it did it in a very, very narrow space. It only did it for Bitcoin. And then since then, we've had about 1,000 different systems come out and say, all right, we can do this thing that Bitcoin can't do. And here's this new feature that we can do, or here we can do things faster or cheaper. But they always did it as if it was technology, right? As if that this is the next big new thing. And the sacrifice that every single one of these systems has made is that they are less permanent, less reliable, more short term. Ethereum was much more short term than just in the way it's built, but also in the culture, much more short term than Bitcoin. Solana is even more short term than Ethereum, and you get these sort of short term wins, but over time you don't build anything fundamental. You don't build a fundamental economy. And so what we're trying to do with BitcoinOS is correct that early mistake that was made by going back to the roots of building on permanent foundations, right? I think the way we think about Bitcoin, what makes Bitcoin special is it's not hardware and it's not software. Ethereum is software, Solana is software. But Bitcoin is something new. It's a concept that we've never had before, and I think it deserves a name. And the name that I've given to it is permaware. It's a series of digital rules that will be the same today, tomorrow, for your grandchildren and for their grandchildren. And Bitcoin is going to die with the heat death of the universe. And so we're building on those permanent foundations, not the first smart contract platform, but the last smart contract platform, not the first privacy system, but the last privacy system. What we're doing is we're providing to people to the ability to build anything they want on Bitcoin, but in a way that what they build is going to last forever. So I've spoken for a while, and you guys might have questions for that, but I can tell you guys over, as we keep talking, a few stories about why I think this is important.
Yeah, it's a very interesting perspective, with the digital, digital real estate. I actually had posted about something recently with the, proliferation of all these meta protocols and all these new things that are popping up on Bitcoin. I think the digital property of Bitcoin only becomes more important because because sats are now becoming something essential to like data blobs, and you can use one sat multiple times within all these different protocols that can represent different types of value. It's almost like having a piece of property in the real world, and then you build, a 3 or 4 story building, and then you lease out every single office on this one piece of property. And this to me seems to be where Bitcoin's heading to. And so having every single sat within a UTXO just becomes even more valuable because of the opportunity of all these different data layers that you could be implemented on it, and the different types of value that can be done here. And I think this kind of idea most people are kind of circling around is why this becomes a lot more interesting. Of course, then, right, scams and speculation kind of pop up. But I think one final point of your last post or last comment about how Ethereum's a little bit more short term than Bitcoin is, and then Solana's a little bit more short term than Ethereum is. And Adam and I've had this conversation a few times, and we believe, it's something similar to the faster the TPS is, the faster the transactions are on a blockchain. It seems to be the more short term the trading cycle is, because you can just basically instantly enter and exit a trade or a transaction of different types. And the cultures of each of these 3 main blockchains are starting to become a little bit more apparent, where you have Gen Z generally, dominating Solana. Millennials are generally dominating Ethereum, and you have a little bit of the older generation on Bitcoin. And it's just interesting to kind of follow that through here. And Bitcoin now has become, right, it's permanent. We know it's going to be here forever. And the 10-minute block time is a feature, not a bug, although I know that's been kind of a cliche term for quite a while. I did have here pulled up on our live stream, one of the innovations that you're introducing to BitcoinOS. It says, "We finally done it for the first time ever. A ZK proof has been verified on Bitcoin mainnet by BitcoinOS." Could you explain to us first kind of what a ZK proof is, why this is so important, and how you went about doing this? As we know, ZKs have been, I guess, in production in the crypto space for, close to 10 years at this point, starting with Zcash, and then some of these layer 2s that are ZKs. But yeah, let's just dive a little bit into the innovation here, and then we could go into a little bit of other discussion.
Sure. So what is ZK? So ZK is a type of cryptography called zero knowledge cryptography, which allows you to prove some fact, some mathematical fact, some computation fact, without actually providing any of the information about how you're proving it. So that's a bit complex to understand, but basically the idea was, how could we create secrets that we could reveal a relevant part of the secret without revealing anything else about the secret. So to try and make it easier to understand, think about when you're going to a bar, right? So you want to go into a bar in the US, for example, you need to be 21 years old. So if you need to prove that you're 21 years old, you need to give them this little card, which is all of your information. What your name is, what year and month and day you were born, what your address is, what you look like, everything, which state you're from. So instead of just giving them a little bit of a secret that is relevant to them, you give them all of your secrets. So what is the zero knowledge proof sort of equivalent of this? Imagine if you could go into a bar and you were able to like scan this card without showing it to anyone. And then either a green light goes on or a red light goes on. If a red light goes on, it means you're not yet 21. If the green light goes on, it means you are 21. And now you've revealed to them only the relevant piece of information without revealing any of the other information or even what your age is, just that it's over 21. So that's kind of what zero knowledge proofs were invented to be able to do. And we've used it. The first thing it was used in crypto for was sort of creating Zcash, which was to make private transactions. So you could prove that a transaction, like you could prove to, I could prove to you that you've received money without revealing to anyone else that you've received the money or who you received it from, or even how much you received. And then we realized that when you're doing that, you're actually compressing information. You're not just revealing very specific parts of information. You're taking a whole bunch of this information, all of that stuff that is on your card, you've turned it into this really, really succinct idea. And so what Ethereum then did with it is it created rollups, right? So now you can have a whole bunch of activity happening on this rollup chain, and you can prove with very, very little information that this activity has happened to Ethereum layer 1. And then Ethereum layer 1 adds it to the Ethereum layer 1 block, and now that information is locked in forever. So you get the security of Ethereum, but you get, maybe the cheaper transactions that you get on the rollup. So now we've brought this technology to Bitcoin. Now we can use it and will use it to allow for private transactions on Bitcoin. But what it also means is that we can do the same thing that Ethereum does, which is create huge numbers of transactions and prove that they happened on Bitcoin, so they have the exact same security as Bitcoin. So you get scalability, you get fast, cheap transactions, but now you're getting it with the security of Bitcoin. But for Bitcoin, this is an even bigger deal than it was for Zcash or was for Ethereum, because we can go a step further. We can perform computation off-chain that doesn't even exist on Bitcoin, right? Everyone knows that Bitcoin, people call it boomer chain, right? Because there's very little you can actually do on Bitcoin. But now we can literally do anything. The power of computation is that Turing complete means that you can do anything. You can create TikTok, you can create OnlyFans, and you can create AI, all using the same tools, right? That's how broad of an innovation computation is. But now we can make that computation decentralized and provable and secured by Bitcoin by doing it, by wrapping all of that computation into a ZK proof and putting it onto Bitcoin. And so what we've actually done is we've kind of given Bitcoin, for the first time, a brain with which to process any level of complexity, and eyes which allow it to see activity that is happening on other chains or in other computation environments like rollups that could exist on Bitcoin. So to sort of summarize, what is the fact that we now, as of what is the date today? It's the 27th. Okay, so we now, for literally exactly 1 month, have had ZK on Bitcoin, and what that means is that we can basically split Bitcoin into 2 periods. Bitcoin before was able to have privacy, scale, and computation, and for the last month, Bitcoin has had privacy, scale, and computation available to it.
So if you're posting the proof on Bitcoin, but where's the proof computated? Is that on a separate blockchain? How does it work?
So it can be in any kind of environment. It can be on a separate blockchain. It can be on a like a rollup, or it could even be on a centralized server. Now, I give you guys an example of this. I actually, just before I got on the Spaces, I was talking to a games company who are, building a AAA massively multiplayer game, right? And they reached out to us because they said, "Holy shit!" Right? So there's been a lot of talk for years now about what if we could have like serious games have in-game assets be digital assets, right? Like NFTs or digital gold or whatever that you have in the game, right? The sword can be an NFT, but no one's done this. And the reason, the biggest reason no one's done this, and this is sort of what these guys just told me, is what are you going to do it on? You're not going to do it on Solana because you don't know if Solana is going to be around in 4 years. But your game hopefully is going to be around for 20 years. Like World of Warcraft. You can't do it on Ethereum for the same reason. Most of Ethereum changes every few months, and these days, Ethereum, the chain is basically dead. Everything's migrated. 80% of the transactions have migrated into these rollups. But if we can do it on Bitcoin, then we know it's something which is not just going to last as long as our game, it's going to outlast our game by probably centuries. So we feel secure. Now, for the first time, we can actually build real world, economic use cases because we finally have a system which is able to register property rights in a way which is secure enough and permanent enough that it makes sense for that.
So my question is like so if you're doing the computations and stuff, off of Bitcoin and you're kind of posting the proofs on Bitcoin, it's similar to, there've been a couple different, not with ZKs, but just like, how do you prove something, I don't know. I'm just thinking of like, how do you prove that you posted something before? Well, you put the hash of it on Bitcoin, and that proves you did it at a certain date and time. And then you can release that information later. Like there have been these experiments before, but that doesn't necessarily secure what is being, computated and what's actually happening off of Bitcoin. It's kind of like the proofs on Bitcoin, sure, but the other stuff isn't necessarily on Bitcoin. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, exactly. I think that's an excellent, that's exactly the right way to think about it. That's exactly the right question, right? Because proving, like doing a hash of something and then putting it on Bitcoin is completely useless. Because, great, I've got a hash of something, but that the actual thing is stored somewhere else. And so if that something else disappears or goes away or so gets corrupted or anything happens to it, the hash is totally useless.
right.
But now for the first time, we can actually have the activity be reflected itself on Bitcoin, not just a little check mark that the activity happened somewhere else, but the activity itself can happen on Bitcoin. So I'll give you guys an example. And actually, I'll continue to use the example I was just discussing, right? So now there's a game studio that can take the most high quality sort of premium items in their game, and they can put them as ordinals on Bitcoin. Okay, but you could have done that before, right? But the problem was, okay, so this is not a hash. This is the actual asset is on Bitcoin. But the problem was for them, for everyone, that, okay, you've put it there, but now, so what, right? Like I've given it to Jake, and now it's Jake's. What we actually want is we want this asset to exist on Bitcoin, but if it moves in the game, right? If someone steals from Jake his special sword, now they own the special sword. And so you need a system which is able to programmatically move that ordinal, programmatically change that ordinal, right? If that sword now in your game, you complete a quest and it gets plus 16 to, I don't know, fire, right? You need the ordinal itself to change. And so a game studio can now have all of that computation happen to the ordinal on Bitcoin, and the ordinal will change ownership, will change its nature, will move, will get locked up, will do we'll create new tokens out of it, right? Anything that you want, from a DAO to staking to NFTs that are truly programmatic, all of that is now possible on Bitcoin.
It's very, it's very interesting to see the Bitcoin Season 2 narrative take off here and have a lot of fun. Pensive, one of the guys in the live stream says, was BTC made to have games on it? BTC was made to have poker games, but World of Warcraft.
Sure.
That's
so one of the things that people don't know about Bitcoin is that the very first version of Bitcoin that was released by Satoshi had the very first dApp in existence built into it. It was a poker game. So Satoshi, in his very first version, released Bitcoin with built-in poker. And then he removed it because he thought that this was too much heavy lifting. That, if you're playing a poker game, you don't necessarily want every single person for the rest of human history to have to sort of store on their computer all of the hands that you and everyone else have played. And what ZK does is it basically brings back that ability that Satoshi wanted, to have applications and programmable assets, programmable money on Bitcoin without you and everyone else having to store all of that computation on your hard drive.
Yeah, this essentially then makes Bitcoin a DA layer, but it's verified, or you could say, right, all the transactions are verified by the miners, whereas Ethereum, it's by validators, and it's not inheriting the security, is what they're saying on Ethereum. That's the issue. Whereas Bitcoin, since proof of work, the ZK is verified by the miners, which therefore inherits the security. Correct?
So this is a bit of a technical point, and I don't know how much you want to get into it, but actually, no, this doesn't make Bitcoin a DA layer. I mean, you could use Bitcoin as a DA layer. That's very expensive, but most DA layer is like data availability. Most data that you actually have associated with a poker game, or with a computer game, or even with real estate transactions, you actually don't really want to store them. You want to be able to sort of dismiss them over time. So for most use cases, Bitcoin wouldn't be the DA layer. It would just be sort of like the end result of what the asset is, who it belongs to, and what are its properties. And all of that would be expressed and programmable in Bitcoin. So yeah, you could use Bitcoin as a DA layer, but in most cases you wouldn't.
Got it. I appreciate the clarification there. I have here pulled up on the live stream for people that are watching. It looks like these are the 3 tech advances through BitcoinOS, and I'd like to kind of dive into each of these a little bit so we can understand what's really going on here and the most important parts. There's 3 components to this. There's the BitSnark, which says it's a highly efficient ZK verification, bridging Bitcoin security. You have a Merkle mesh, which is the interoperability and composability. It feels like a single coin. And then Grail, which is your multi-rollup bridge for bridging Bitcoin assets. I'd love to start. We'll start with the bridge itself. And one reason as well is Emblem, the company that we work with that's hosting this, we're in interoperability protocol. We've been bringing Bitcoin assets to Ethereum and to other chains since 2020, and for doing that, quite well. But when Emblem started when Emblem hit mainnet in 2020, it started on Counterparty in 2016. The interoperability, interoperability space was quite small. There was like 1 or 2 bridges. Wrapped Bitcoin had just come out, and vaulting had really just started figuring out what its technology was. Fast forward now, 4 years later, we see all these different types of bridges, different types of rollups, right? People are looking for permissionless ones with attempting to, upgrade Bitcoin with different opcodes, and all these different chains are going about it in a different way. Let's dive into Grail, and just please explain to us, what the vitalness of Grail within BitcoinOS, and then what type of implementation is this bridge compared to maybe some other ones in the industry?
Sure. So we already spoke about ZK proofs, right? And ZK proofs is like this cryptographic primitive that we've now added to Bitcoin. Okay, but now we need to build things that can use that. And one of the first things that people want to be able to build with that is the ability to bridge assets and data into different environments that are also secured by Bitcoin, or maybe even Ethereum, right? That's not secured by Bitcoin. And as someone who's been working on bridges, there's like literally there's a bunch of problems with bridges, but there's one major problem with bridges, which is they're very scary, right? they can get hacked, they can have an exploit, they could stop working even without the exploit, and then all the funds get stuck, right? There's all kinds of things that can go wrong. And so the challenge is building trustlessness into bridges. In other words, you want whatever it is that you're bridging, which is, and what you're and you're always basically bridging the same thing. You're bridging your property, right? So you want the rights to that property. You want that property to always remain secure and yours with the same trust assumption. So what Grail does is it allows the bridging of assets, BTC, ordinals, anything else, into these other environments while they're still secured by Bitcoin. And we use the ZK to do this because the way bridges today are built is you have like a committee, right? Maybe it's proof of stake, maybe it's just a multi-sig, whatever, right? You have some kind of committee, and those members of that committee, they hold the Bitcoin or the Ether or whatever it is that you're bridging for you. And the reason it's scary is because they could be malicious or they could get hacked or whatever. With Grail, we actually don't have a committee. Instead, we have a zero knowledge proof on Bitcoin. So when you move your funds in, you're creating sort of like this zero knowledge smart contract on Bitcoin. And when you want to move your funds back out, right? You want to withdraw them, or somebody else is withdrawing them because they've out traded you or whatever. They come with a zero knowledge proof that they control, that they own this asset. They prove to Bitcoin that they own this asset, and now the asset is theirs. And so all changes of ownership are done via these deterministic zero knowledge proofs that don't require a committee at all. And that is about as trustless as you can get. And that's sort of like that's the holy grail. That's why we call it Grail, right? That's the holy grail of property ownership.
One question there, because how does in this case, Bitcoin, or you mentioned like ordinals, how does that enter into, or if I'm putting a ordinal into the structure, am I depositing it into a wallet? And if it's into a wallet, then is that wallet then controlled by this, in theory, smart contract? Or how's that controlled? Obviously, to allow the movement of assets for even an in-game system requires some third party to hold or be able to control that asset, right? How does that technically work, kind of?
Yeah, so no, you're not putting it into a wallet, and that's sort of like that's what makes this special. So when we demonstrated ZK on Bitcoin, what we did is we created one of the things that we did is we demonstrated the creation of a UTXO that is controlled by a smart contract. That smart contract is actually written into the UTXO itself. And so for the first time, we created a Bitcoin address, right? A Bitcoin UTXO that isn't owned by anyone. It is actually only owned by the ZK proof.
Gotcha.
And so that's how we do it. Basically, there is no owner so long as it is sort of locked up in that way.
Interesting. Gotcha.
Yeah, that is interesting. I haven't heard that implementation before of putting the smart contract within the UTXO stack there. I have seen, so this is one attempt at permissionless or trustless bridging, right? I believe the Cat VM team is also attempting to do this with OPCat, and also you have BitVM has attempted to do this as well. I have here pulled up the white paper, and in the abstract, literally the fourth word is BitVM. So was this, were you inspired by BitVM and kind of the computation, compute anything on Bitcoin idea? And then just, dive into a little bit of the factors that played into building this out.
Yes. So what BitVM did when that paper came out last year is it basically introduced to the world an entirely new computing paradigm for Bitcoin. It said, listen, guys, theoretically, we can actually write smart contracts into TapScript, and we can, we could use the cryptography that Taproot gave Bitcoin to basically write these smart contracts, and you'll need to have, and these smart contracts will always work, but they can't be verified by the miners, because the miners don't. They only verify the existing opcodes in Bitcoin, which are too limited to actually write complete smart contracts. So instead, what we'll do is we will create a large number of, potentially infinite number of people who are sort of watching these smart contracts. And if someone tries to cheat the smart contract, any one of these people, you only need one, right? Literally the entire world could be conspiring against you. But if there's one honest person who can come and say to the smart contract, no, what the instruction they're giving you is false, because they can mathematically prove it's false, they can defeat the entire world. And this was mind-blowing, because it introduced not just the idea of smart contracts on Bitcoin, but also the idea that you can have a trust assumption of 1 of n, or what we call the honest singleton. Instead of an honest majority, you can have a system which is secure in every single circumstance, unless everyone together in the world agrees to fuck it. So so that was the BitVM paper, and since then a huge number of people have been talking about how can we actually implement this on Bitcoin. We had because we'd been working on technology to bring smart contracts to Bitcoin now for several years, we had quite a lot of insights into this. And so we realized that the approach that most people were taking was too complicated, or wouldn't fit in Bitcoin transactions. And so we developed a different technique, which we called BitSnark. And we first proved it on testnet, and then later we brought it to mainnet. And so it's the same sort of computing paradigm, the same family as what OpCat would like to do, or BitVM would like to do. But and maybe some other ways to achieve this are possible. But right now, this is the only way it's actually achievable on Bitcoin.
Very, very interesting. So moving through the white paper, it's BitSnark says several approaches have been suggested, and due to limited nature of Bitcoin script, these approaches require either slow, expensive on-chain computation. So then BitSnark focuses the most useful for this technology, ZK Snark verification, which we dove into a little bit in the initial beginning. But moving in then, right under that is the BitSnark VM, which is what I'm assuming kind of powers all of this, is where the computation comes from. Could you just dive in a little bit of an overview of how the BitSnark VM operates, and kind of where it exists outside of the Bitcoin blockchain?
Yeah, sure. So it doesn't exist outside of the Bitcoin blockchain. It exists all inside of that. That basically is the smart contract that is written into the UTXO.
Got it.
So the way this works, and sort of like the magic sauce here, is that with Taproot, you can create these massive trees of potential transactions, which only one of them will ever get executed. And no one really, I think, when people released Taproot, they weren't exactly sure how people would use it. And, the first real use case was ordinals. where ordinals basically said, okay, well, we can embed into this tree all kinds of data. So instead of, but the data that is embedded into an ordinal is text. It's like text data. If you actually go look at an ordinal on the code, it's like written in human readable language. So what we did instead is we created massive trees of zeros and ones. We basically wrote the software directly into the taproot, into the tap script. And what that software knows how to do is verify ZK proofs. In this particular case, we can verify different kinds of ZK proofs, but in this particular case, snarks or Groth16 snarks. And so that's how it works, right? You've got this sort of massive piece of software that is written into a Bitcoin transaction, but can remain very, very small because only one piece of it executes.
Very, very interesting. So then this leads me to believe there was a comment that was made yesterday on our announcement of the show. Somebody had asked about how you can write Bitcoin in Rust. Is that how this is done, where you're taking a smart contract written in Rust and you put it in the UTXO using the BitSnark VM? Do I have that right?
Actually, interestingly, no.
Okay.
Almost everyone else is trying to write Rust. Eventually, we might write a version of what we're doing in Rust as well, but we've written what we've written so far in Python and in TypeScript. So, but I think the more general idea here is that we can literally use any software language. We could write this in anything.
Okay.
And that means that you can also now program Bitcoin with anything.
Yeah,
this is all like so. This is so dev heavy. My brain is literally. When is there going to be a simple interface game, something that I can play around with? I can bet Jake $5.
So
it's going to execute that and just happen automatically. When can somebody do one of these simple interfaces?
So we're actually, I think we're going to open source the work that we've done pretty soon. We're sort of cleaning it up so that we don't embarrass ourselves when we release the code that we didn't write the comments right or whatever. But basically, we're going to open source it pretty soon, and then everyone will be able to start building whatever they want in it.
Pensive Shepe says he wants JavaScript. So, okay, cool. So let's dive into some of the practicality of this, as Adam's brain's a little bit fried here. Thinking about, the applications that are going to be built on top of Bitcoin OS, what do you perceive to be kind of the low-hanging fruit, or some of the like immediate applications that'll probably begin to pop up once this is open sourced?
So I think there's one application that literally everyone is talking about, which is Rollups on Bitcoin. There's, probably somewhere between 80 and 100 projects today that are saying that they're building Rollups on Bitcoin. Some of them are scams, some of them are real, but all of them have the same problem, which is they say that they're Rollups to Bitcoin, but they can't actually be Rollups to Bitcoin because there's no way to roll up to Bitcoin. For that, you need a bridge, and a bridge which doesn't just bridge the assets, but also bridges the data. So that's the next big thing, and that's what we want to release with Grail, and we expect to release that towards the end of this year. What that should do is it should start kicking off like a whole sort of new world of rollups and scalability and all kinds of applications for Bitcoin, and I think it's going to be super exciting. In fact, my bet is that the bull market hasn't even really started, and that the main narrative of the bull market is, holy shit, everyone, you can now build on Bitcoin. Let's go do that. The other thing that we're building, and we hope to also open source this pretty soon, is for the first time we want to introduce programmable tokens on Bitcoin. So this could interact with rollups, but wouldn't necessarily have to. And the idea is, imagine we could have tokens on Bitcoin like BRC20s or like runes or like ordinals, but with the full suite of programmability, right? So that means that you could stake them. You could create DAOs with them. You could create games around them. So that's the other big thing that we're working on, and those two things in and of themselves are just giant pieces of there's a lot that in and of itself is just huge. And then there's other components that we're working on as well. One of the key ones that we're excited about is the ability to bring native privacy to Bitcoin, shielded transactions to Bitcoin. And I think, especially now with Pavel Durov, the founder of Telegram, being arrested, I think the world is shouting to us that we need this as well.
Yeah, Adam's been exploring privacy. Seems to be a hot topic, at least on the alt proof of work chains as well. Sure. Coming back there, and what's your thoughts on that? What's the progress like on some of these other chains?
We've got, well, I mean, look, it's everywhere. It's really difficult, and there's differing views. Generally what I'm gathering is real privacy people want it built from the ground up, right? Built directly into the protocols or into the blockchains from the beginning. But obviously, I mean, I don't know anybody who would be against more privacy on Bitcoin. In 2 weeks, Wednesday, we'll have, was it Amir Takai on, who is somewhat of a privacy expert. He's created like a completely private DAO where you can do just like this invisible kind of DAO structure and stuff. And so, yeah, excited to talk about that more. How would it look in your view? What's your best strategy for making Bitcoin transactions private? What's your best thought right now on how to do that? Is it possible? I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You tell me.
So it's definitely possible, and it's possible as a native transaction on Bitcoin. There are a number of ways it could work, but I'll give you guys sort of like a simple example. Is well, I call this a simple. Here's sort of like a toy example. Okay, so we all go and we put our Bitcoin into a new set of UTXOs, and these are ZK enabled UTXOs. So you go and you put your Bitcoin into a ZK, and Jake does, and I do, and now there are thousands and thousands of Bitcoin in these UTXOs. And now instead of going to Bitcoin mainnet and saying, all right, I'm publishing my transaction and I'm sending my Bitcoin to Jake, what I do is I post a ZK proof, which proves that I've transferred my Bitcoin. And only the person who actually received the Bitcoin sort of gets the counterparty proof to that, and now they own the Bitcoin. So remember I said you can now create like tokens on Bitcoin that only move on the basis of ZK proofs. So we can spend a bunch of time now just moving these ZK proofs amongst it, or basically generating new ZK proofs and sharing those.
So the Bitcoin's not moving then. It's just the ZK proof is set.
Eventually, eventually the Bitcoin has to move, because now, okay, I want to take my Bitcoin and I want to deposit it into an exchange. So what I do now is I have got a bunch of different ZK proofs. I publish those ZK proofs. Nobody knows who's publishing them. In fact, that nobody even knows that you're publishing them as a set, right? You can publish them over a minute or an hour or a day. But what happens is all of that Bitcoin that is on chain, people see it move, but they don't know who moved it. They don't know how much of it is moving for one user or between 50 different users. And so basically you just see Bitcoin moving, but you don't know how many people are moving it, who's moving it, how much they're moving. That's privacy on Bitcoin.
Yeah, it sounds somewhat similar to Monero with the ring signature scheme, where it's all kind of jumbled together, and it's really kind of have to pick which one, and then to even dive in to understand where the source and the input and output is.
Yeah, that's right. And there is also a way that, look, this is going to take a little bit of time to develop, and there'll be increase. There'll be people iterating on this. But one of the interesting things about this is that, and I don't know how to do this yet, but just to be clear, but theoretically it's possible that you could also have a system which, as a result, is also hugely scalable. And then you can go to the government and say, listen, guys, we didn't build a privacy system. We just built a system which allows for people to move Bitcoin amongst themselves, just by using the internet, just, super scalable. So Bitcoin is moving in all kinds of ways, and only sort of like the very last transactions are getting settled on Bitcoin. And so you can get scalability and privacy native to Bitcoin utilizing this kind of technology. So a few years from now, Bitcoin is going to be a completely different system from what we're used to. It's going to be scalable and private and exciting and innovative, and it's going to have a bunch of scams, but it's also going to have a bunch of sort of use cases that up until now weren't available anywhere in crypto. Moving away from the privacy for a second, although this is actually, the privacy is going to be relevant here. One of the things that people have been saying for like 8 years is let's tokenize real estate on crypto. And I think one of the reasons that this hasn't taken off is, even though, I would love to, take out a mortgage on, using a DeFi platform, but I'm never, I would never be able to do that, because when I take out a mortgage, sort of what I'm tokenizing and putting into the system is real estate. Now, a mortgage is a thing that lasts for 30 years. Now, I don't think there's anyone here who has diamond hands that are diamond enough to take out a 30-year anything on Ethereum. And so no one's actually used the damn thing. No one, even the people like us who are would be the first adopters, would never use that. But on Bitcoin, it's a different story. And so in a few years from now, would I feel comfortable sort of, creating a trust in the Cayman Islands, which just creates like an NFT of an asset, and putting that into the Bitcoin equivalent of Aave? Absolutely, I would. And so I think we're going to start seeing sort of mainstream adoption of these kinds of DeFi tools, simply because they're becoming available in Bitcoin. And also because the other big thing is, I don't want anyone in the world to know that I did this. And so if that can be wrapped with native privacy, now we're talking. Now we can start doing real finance.
Let me ask you, because just to get into the details of how you guys are financing this, and is there a token going to be a part of it? What's that kind of?
Adam wants to know what he can ape.
No, I definitely don't. I'm wondering how this is going to work, because obviously if it does have a token and stuff, you're going to get a lot of pushback from Bitcoiners. So wondering how that's going to work.
Yes, so we do have a token, and we want to get that pushback because we want to have that be one of the central debates. The idea that a lot of Bitcoin maxis have, and Bitcoin maxis, they're very vocal, but they're a very, very small percentage, even just of Bitcoin users. But they've been running around telling the world that the only asset that you need is Bitcoin, which, if you think about it for more than 2 minutes, is maybe the stupidest idea that anyone has ever said. Because it's like, okay, guys, we're going to have this reserve currency. We're going to have a global currency. Woohoo! What are we going to use it for? Buying and selling itself. Right? You can't have an economy which only has one asset. And so one of the things that, a lot of people think of me as a Bitcoin maxi, but I think of myself as a Bitcoin accelerationist. I want to bring permanent, decentralized, trustless finance to the world. And the only way I think we do this is by creating a real economy on any system which is perma-rare. And unfortunately, the only one we actually have is Bitcoin. So yes, so we will have a token. Now, what is this token going to do? It can play a lot of different roles, because it's going to be the first truly programmable token on Bitcoin. And I think that in and of itself is huge. But one of the things that we plan to use it for is, remember I said that you want to have thousands of people who are able to watch these transactions and challenge anyone who tries to cheat the system, right? You only need one of them, but you need to make sure that one exists. And so we're going to be utilizing the token to create a set of staked operators, basically agents, right, who are there to protect the world from anyone trying to get a fast one through the system.
Interesting. That seems to be kind of the trend between these programmable layers or any type of cross-chain network, is that eventually to fully decentralize, you take the token to stake it for validation across the network for whatever performing computation or actions that are native to that ecosystem protocol.
Yes, exactly. So here the ecosystem is Bitcoin, but Bitcoin itself doesn't have this native computation layer. And so we're bringing that to Bitcoin, and we're creating a way. Anyone will be able to use our system. You know, will be open source. You'll be able to use it without, just with Bitcoin, or without using our agents. But if you want there to be a pool of professional agents who are there, and making sure that you have like liveness, uptime, fast, a fast response. It's kind of like Lightning Network, right? Lightning Network doesn't, you could potentially run your own Lightning node and do everything yourself, but most people, because you'd have to be online all the time to receive a Lightning transaction, most people rely on what are called a network of what are called watchtowers. Now, you don't have to be online all the time to use the system, because it exists on Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is always there for you. But it's the same idea, right? Let's make sure that we can build a real business, helping make this tool as powerful, as effective, as safe, and efficient for people who are using it in the real world, not just like 10 geeks, who are going to program it themselves. And my dream is, like I said, I want to see a real economy built in crypto. And I think the way that we do that is we create these businesses which are completely decentralized, that nobody needs to know who the operators are. The operators are incentivized in such a way that they will never cheat the system, just like Bitcoin miners. And that's what a decentralized, fully digital crypto business looks like. The first digital, fully crypto business was Bitcoin, and I think we need thousands and thousands more.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that anymore. I have personally just one final question for you is, throughout this hour-long conversation, we can tell that you've thought very deeply about this, and this probably comes from the experience of building on Bitcoin. You're also, the founder of Sovereign, which has been, one of the leading kind of DeFi, one of the first really DeFi platforms on Bitcoin using Rootstock. What kind of lessons, what type of lessons did you learn from, operating Root or operating Sovereign that allows you to, basically create BitcoinOS, through that experience of operating, as close as you could be possible to doing DeFi on Bitcoin?
Well, I would say that BitcoinOS is the biggest lesson, although we kind of knew what the lesson would be even when we started. So we knew that Bitcoin, building DeFi on Bitcoin with the tools that we had available at the time would still have many elements of trust in them. Most importantly is, how do you actually use Bitcoin in the system? And so, the Bitcoin that exists on Rootstock, and now, we just launched on Bob, and we have like 10,000 users on Bob, etc. But like, everyone is using some kind of wrapped Bitcoin when they're utilizing Sovereign. And so one of the things that we want to do is we want to change that. The other thing is, with Rootstock, you're using a system which doesn't really have equivalent security to Bitcoin. And so here with BitcoinOS, we have the ability to basically allow us, our users, I'm a user, to use a system which is truly decentralized without compromise. Without compromising on security, without compromising on the assets that they have, and also without compromising on privacy, speed, low-cost transactions. I think, basically we knew, even when we were building Sovereign in the early days, that what we wanted to do is we wanted to create a way to build an economy on Bitcoin, and to allow people to already start using their Bitcoin to, take out loans, create Bitcoin-backed stablecoins, trade, earn yield. Everyone who like stakes on Sovereign, they don't earn SOV tokens, they earn BTC. And the profit that they've been making has been anywhere between 6.5% to 20% a year, just in BTC, or like pure BTC payout, no inflation of anything. But for us to truly get to the end game, right? Not to build the world's next smart contract layer, but to build the world's last smart contract layer, the final boss level for Bitcoin. What we need is a system which is going to allow us on Bitcoin to have the full range of programmable computation capabilities that we can bring secured by Bitcoin forever. And that's our goal with BitcoinOS.
Very, very fascinating. Yago, I really appreciate you for coming on, having this conversation. It's this is definitely one of the more, technically, dense, but also very, innovative product. Just putting everything inside of the UTXO and using ZKs. It's very, very fascinating. Adam, you have any final questions or comments?
Yeah, man, I just can't wait for you guys to like build a little something that we can try. Because I think that's so important to get people like onboarded to what, you can talk about it and have white papers and kind of all that sort of stuff is great for developers, and obviously to bring developers in and build on what you're trying to accomplish. But to make it simple for the end users on why they want this, I think it's really, really important. But you've done a good job of communicating that today, and I look forward to seeing what you guys build in the future.
Well, thanks very much, guys. And yeah, I agree with you. I can't wait to have more people playing with it as well. So that's hopefully coming very soon.
Yeah, keep us posted, man. I'll definitely be following along your journey as well as BitcoinOS, and we'll stay in touch. For those that are new to the show, Adam, myself, and Chris are on stage. We work at Emblem Vault, leading cross-chain NFT protocol. We host the show Tuesday through Thursday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. Tomorrow, we have the Bet BTC joining us, talking about building prediction markets on Bitcoin. And then Thursday, we have our town hall that we do at the end of every month, which gives all of the updates and new and exciting announcements regarding Emblem Vault. Please give Yago and the BitcoinOS team a follow if you found this conversation interesting. Also, give the Emblem Vault account a follow up in the top left-hand corner so that you can tune in to all of these conversations throughout the week. We do it 3 times a week, as well as follow all of the cool cross-chain innovations that we'll be introducing to Bitcoin and the rest of the ecosystem from here on out. Again, Yago, really appreciate the conversation, and really everyone who has been here and hung out through it. Seems like their retention rate was really high because I see a lot of the same faces since at the beginning of the conversation. Again, please enjoy your Tuesday. Have fun out there. Be safe. And we'll be back here tomorrow at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. Until then, guys, be safe, have fun, and see you soon.
Thanks very much, guys. Thanks, everyone.